Is it Mihail or Michael in Denmark? Pronouns or he?
It's Mihail.
Mihail, nice to meet you. You have a question for myself and Aron. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I do. But before I do that, I would like to have a sort of an icebreaker. And I say that earlier you spoke of the plural of anecdotes isn't data, and I like to say that the plural of anecdote is confirmation bias.
Okay, I was putting together a video. I was putting together a video called compound assertions instead of compound interest, because so many people are like, but if I claim this and I claim this and I claim this and I claim this, they think it stacks up to something when really they're staying at the same level across the board. But yeah.
I kind of met someone like that today. But anyway, my question is on morality. I want to know, why do you consider that subjective morality is at all a form of morality? Because as far as I have seen, it doesn't have the qualities associated with morality. It cannot back them up the way we'd expect when it comes to morality.
Why would you need?
Why is subjective morality?
How would we know?
Why isn't it? Morality is just the model that addresses views about what is right and wrong.
Okay.
How would you determine whether something is moral or not?
So let's start like this. Would you say that morality has prescriptive norms?
I'm asking you.
Prescriptive norms. Oh, go ahead. Ask your question. Good.
Okay. Then if you're asking me, I would say that morality is prescriptive, and if we have a subjective basis for morality, that cannot be properly imposed, because every other subject would have a different thing to prescribe. And
no. Is there anybody out there who thinks that they can just walk into my house, kill me, and take my stuff, and that's moral? Would they argue not that they had desperate circumstances by which they had to violate what we all know as a common morality, but that it was actually moral to do these things? Is there anybody in the world? Is there anybody in the world that was active that would say that is a moral thing to do?
Possibly.
I don't know of any such person, but if morality is subjective and somebody does have that perspective, then as far as that person is concerned, it would be.
Then hypothetically, you could imagine somebody like that, but do you know of any case like that? Because my suspicion is that everybody, atheist, theist, regardless of religion, whoever, everybody knows that it is immoral to bust into somebody's house, murder them, and steal their shit. I'm going to say that everybody knows that. And the reason that we know this is because of social standards, which are universal. Every society has these kind of standards. There's a certain objective level. Now, there may be minutia. There may be the minor details where it may depend on the extenuating circumstances. But on the whole, overall, if you look at as has often been brought up, that there's certain societies that have done horrible things, and they usually come up with excuses for why they get to violate what they know to be immoral. The justifications, well, they deserved it, they were the wrong race, or they were the wrong religion, or whatever. We decided that they were evil for whatever reason. They make up excuses to justify the atrocities. They're violations of the common morality. But my view is that on the whole, for the big things at least, that there is a common morality that we all understand because we are a social species. So we understand that it is immoral to violate somebody else's rights to, the pursuit of happiness, for health and longevity, whatever. When we come in and victimize somebody who didn't do anything to deserve it, that's immoral. Everybody understands that. That makes it objectively immoral. If we have a given set of reasons why something is immoral, and we can discuss the reasons why something is immoral, whether we are atheist or theist, well, then that's an objective morality. We have a standard by which we can determine whether something is moral or not. And when we have such a standard, we can also apply that to gods to decide whether the god is moral or not. Whereas what theists often come up with is a subjective standard where it's either God's opinion or, more importantly, it's whoever's pretending to speak for God, giving their opinion in substitution of God's opinion. In either case, it's subjective. So the theistic morality is the subjective one, and the societal morality is the standard, the objective one.
And I'm gonna dip out of this a little bit, Mihail, and just let you and Aron talk, because I disagree with 90% of what Aron just said, and so I don't think it's worthwhile for you to try to argue with both of us giving two different accounts of morality. So I'll let you and Aron sort it out.
Okay, and then I'm interested if Matt disagrees with us, then I certainly want to know why, but we'll save that for after this.
For another time, yeah, understandable. Well, the thing is that from what you said, the standard that you gave sounded to me like it would be just collective agreement on a cumulative set of subjective perspectives. And you said that your opinion and that we agree, and we may agree, but if there is another group which doesn't hold to this standard, then that would still be a different subjective perspective, which doesn't align with the...
Has there ever been a group that said that it was moral to murder people? Has there ever been a doctrine written anywhere that it's okay to steal from your neighbor?
You literally have people debating the morality of abortion, the morality of countless things. You can't pretend that there's universal agreement on morality. There's just not.
Well, I don't think I'm pretending. As I said, the details are where the issues lie.
Do you think there's universal agreement on morality? Because you're asserting that there basically is, and that makes it objective, neither of which is true.
When you violate someone else's rights, when you victimize another person, if you have to come up with excuses for why that's justified, then you already realize that it wasn't a moral thing to do.
Yeah, and you don't get to call them excuses.
Consider what you said.
That's poisoning the well. No. Yeah, I said I'd stay out of it. Go ahead.
But what if the person who says the reason for acting moral in that way doesn't see it as an excuse, but as a standard which was not broken? Then that's not.
Well, let me put this another way then. In what sense would you say as a theist that you have objective morality? What makes it objective?
The fact that it's not dependent on my opinion.
It's instead dependent on the opinion of a God or someone who speaks for God?
It's complicated.
Is there a set of criteria by which we could measure both the action or choice and the person who declares it to be moral or immoral? Is there a standard by which we can say whether the authority says that something is moral or immoral? Is there a standard by which we can test to see whether the authority is correct?
That's not a question I have asked myself before. I would need some time to prepare for this, and
it's
I don't know
the most important question. This is the area where Aron and I are not only in agreement. This is what I was going to be asking. So people like to pretend. So first of all, there are people who are confused about the difference between objective and subjective morality, and also the difference between absolute and relative morality. And my view on morality is that morality is situational, but that once there's a standard that is available, if you and I agree on the standard, then we can make objective assessments, or we can make assessments that are independent of our opinion because we have a standard to compare it to. Aron was saying something similar to that, and on that we're pretty much in agreement. But the two most important questions, because my claim is that never in the history of the world has anyone made an objection to any secular moral system that they can actually solve by appealing to a religious one. And this is why Aron's question is dead on the nose of what needs to be asked. How do we know that just because someone is saying, hey, my morals come from God, that this means they do in fact come from God, and that even if they, or that we have good reason to think that God would be correct and accurate about this. And so if you don't have a method, then what you're objecting to is something that you can't solve. And where Aron is saying all of them are subjective, or saying that, you know, the religious one is the one that's truly subjective or just as subjective or whatever else, that's a real problem for moral systems where they're saying, you guys don't have an objective standard. Well, do you? What is the objective standard? How do you know that it's reliable? How do you know that it's accurate? Yeah, I don't know. But
for example, Christianity and Islam both recommend that you should kill the unbeliever on the word of, 2 or 3 witnesses, or something equivalent to that. It's phrased differently in the Bible and the Quran, but they both hold that if you've dedicated your life to God, you've done everything you can to be the most righteous person you believe God wants you to be, but it happens to be the wrong version of God. So you believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that he's working as a partner with God, and that's a sin in Islam. So you're going to Muslim heaven. You're going to Muslim hell for that very reason. And mind you, if you don't accept Jesus as your savior, as of course Muslims don't, they go straight to Allah, then if they don't have a middleman, they don't believe in a partner, then all the Muslims are going to go to Christian hell. So that becomes a problem. How do we determine which of these is correct, or if either of them is moral at all? And how is the damnation of hell? How do we judge whether hell is moral, whichever way it goes?
On the going to the other one's hell, there is a question which has been debated that if you follow the moral standard, even if you had the impression that it was from another God, then to the extent that you follow the correct standard, then that would still be considered in your favor. But something else which you asked about earlier was whether or not God would be correct about the moral standard. But the problem with that is that if God gives a commandment and issue on the universe, then the nature of the universe changes. So there would be no circumstances in which God would not be correct.
First of all, you haven't demonstrated that there is a God. You haven't demonstrated that there is a God that gave any commandment. You haven't demonstrated that if God gives a commandment, the fundamental aspect of nature changes. And you haven't demonstrated that if God exists and gives a commandment, it fundamentally changes nature and serves as an objective moral position. You just did the plural of anecdotes. You made 4 stacked assertions that you thought got you somewhere when they got you nowhere.
The thing about that is that, could you say one of the objections you had again? One of the things you said that I haven't demonstrated, just to use that as a...
That a God exists that a God exists, that a God made a moral pronouncement, that the moral pronouncement alters nature, and that the moral pronouncement is in fact correct and objective.
The thing is that when using the I've got two reference God, if neither of those parts existing, having the capacity to change the universe, etc., then if one of those wasn't the case, then we would no longer be aiming to describe God, because
No.
something else.
No, you don't get to do that
very
either.
powerful.
Now you're doing the same thing for God that you tried to do with morality. You started by saying, hey, if it's subjective, it's not morality. Bullshit. That's just an assertion on your part. There's no reason to exclude morality that is subjective in assessment as a valid moral system. You're just asserting that morality needs to be objective. And now you're asserting that God needs to be able to change nature with pronouncements. That may be a pattern, a consistent with some God that may or may not exist, but you don't get to assume that God. You're assuming everything about the God and the characteristics of God and the characteristics of nature and the characteristics of the pronouncement without demonstrating any of it and then asserting that it must be this way. Otherwise, we're just not talking about God. Well, that's not the way arguing works, and that's not the way evidence works. You need to present evidence for what you're saying, not just, well, it's got to be God, therefore it has to be this. That just doesn't work.
But this wasn't a question of evidence. It was a question of framing.
It's a question of evidence. Do you have any way to demonstrate that what you're saying is true? I'm not interested in speculative navel gazing about what type of God could exist that might serve it. I have this view of morality, and that is my view of morality is that it is situational and it is rooted in the principle of our well-being. And so there are some things that we can do that increase and improve our well-being, our physical, mental, societal health. And there are some things that we can do which diminish our well-being. And the things that are good, the things that improve our well-being or maintain its stability are good or neutral. And the things that are opposed to our well-being are the things that are bad. Now, it is objectively true that under most situations, cutting off someone's head is bad for their well-being. And so if you care about well-being, the assessment of whether or not lopping off someone's head violates it becomes non-subjective, even though the foundation you're talking about is subjective. There's nothing about the universe that requires you to care about well-being, but I do. And as long as you do, we can discuss well-being. But you're basically saying, nah, well-being is not the foundation of morality. Morality is something special, and it requires objectivity and blah, blah, blah. Where is your objectivity?
I think I lost the chain of thought. I would need to.
Okay. Well, call back. Think about it. Think about it. Rewatch the call if you need to. Call back another time, and we'll compare my take on this.
I understand, why you're a little confused, because Matt misspoke and he mentioned nasal gazing, so it's understandable that you're a little boogered. And I realize that that's not funny.
Did I say nasal instead of navel?
Yes, you did. But I have an important question. I mean,
look up my nose, motherfucker.
What makes? I mean, because religious believers always want to say that they're moral because they have this belief in God. What about belief in God makes them moral? Is it the threat of hell? Because that doesn't seem to be working statistically.
I would say no. If you're motivated by a reward punishment system, then your inclination to morality is a bit questionable.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm interested in jumping on the next call, so we're
sure.
We'll go ahead and let it go there.
that there is a pretty big gap between what I'm trying to say and what you're how we're transmitting and receiving the message. But yeah, I'll think about it and come back. Have a nice rest of the call.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Goodbye.
All right.
Hey, come on, man. We gotta promote that clip we all just watched.
Well, I'd rather not shill.
Okay, well, Daddy has a $2,000 a month Red Oak habit, and I am your production god, and you will shill when I tell you to shill. Dance for me, baby.
Go, God damn it. Why did my life come to this? Go to patreon.com/call-the-line and donate. God damn it.
This is what happens when we let live chatters write our scripts.